there, this lesson is day 1 of 9-5, and in this lesson we are learning new ways to find the zeros or roots or solutions to quadratic equations. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, and just to refresh your memory, here's a graph. Here's our y-axis, here's our x-axis. These points right here where our parabola intersects or crosses the x-axis, or in this case touches the x-axis, are what we call our solutions or our zeros or our x-intercepts. In Chapter 8, we found those by factoring, but there are equations that cannot be factored. And in that case, we are going to use this quadratic formula. The quadratic formula can be used to solve all quadratic equations. That's not true about factoring. Now in Chapter 8, we only gave you equations that could be factored, but there are some that cannot be factored. And in that case, you'll use the quadratic formula. We're going to start out by talking about, I like to put this part, I call putting it in the cloud, everything that's under the square root, or everything that's in jail, or you can think of that whole b squared minus 4ac as the inmates in the jail. We call that the discriminant. So the discriminant, discriminant, tells you how many solutions an equation will have. So if you look down here, this kind of says, what do you notice? And perhaps you want to pause the video for a moment and take a look at these graphs and take a look at these equations and tell me what you notice. So I'm going to assume you kind of already looked at this, and what I want you to notice is this one right here that has two zeros or x-intercepts. This discriminant, remember just the stuff under the square root, the inmates in the jail, is a positive 25. And we had two solutions. Here the discriminant was 0 and we had one solution. That's where I like to say the parabola comes down and bounces off the x-axis and goes back up. It touches the x-axis, so we have one solution. Here, this is our x-axis down here. Our parabola is way up here. We have no solutions, and the discriminant here was negative. So what do you notice about the discriminant and how many zeros? I want you to remind yourself that zeros are x-intercepts. What it has. So maybe you said something like you noticed when the discriminant is positive, you have two solutions. When the discriminant is 0, you have one. And when the discriminant is negative, you have no solutions. But whatever you put there is fine, because we're going to kind of summarize what we're learning about the discriminant right here. So this is a table that is similar to these graphs we had above, but this says interpreting the discriminant. So again, the discriminant is the stuff under the square roots. So in the big quadratic formula, which we'll look at momentarily, it's just the part that's in the jail, under the square root. Now greater than 0 means that it is positive. You know, on the x-axis, all the numbers greater than 0 are positive. So this tells you if the discriminant is positive, you will have two real solutions. That just means they are actual x-intercepts that you can see. Two x-intercepts. So this is two solutions. Remember, we call those x-intercept solutions. Oh, I guess I didn't need to write that. It's right there. Here, the discriminant is 0. So if the discriminant is 0, that's that case where the parabola comes down, bounces off the x-axis, and goes up. We have one solution, or one x-intercept. And let's sketch in that it could also be the parabola comes up and bounces off the x-axis. So it could be an upward-facing parabola or a downward-facing parabola. This situation is the discriminant is less than 0. That means the discriminant is negative. So if you look up here, that was this example with the negative 15. Well, you can see this is not crossing the x-axis at all. Here's my x-axis, here's my parabola. So this has no real solutions, no x-intercepts. So let's explore this with some quadratic equations. So these are quadratic equations that you're used to seeing from Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. We want to, in each problem, find the discriminant, then determine how many solutions the equation has. So if the discriminant is positive, we'll say 2 solutions. If the discriminant is 0, we will say 1 solution. If the discriminant is negative, we'll say no solutions. Now, the first step in these is we got to remember how we find that discriminant. I want you to leave a little space right here because we're going to first find our A, B, and C, but I'm going to go back to that. I want to write the equation for the discriminant. So it's B squared minus 4AC. Now, what I would like you to do with this is wherever there's a letter or a variable, I want you to wrap it up in parentheses. So I want you to wrap up that B, I want you to wrap up that A, and I want you to wrap up that C. So we're going to substitute values in for B, A, and C. We need those parentheses. Now let's go to our quadratic equation. Remember, A is the coefficient in front of the x squared, so that's a negative 1. B is the coefficient in front of the x, so that's a 6. And C is the constant term hanging off the end, so that's a 3. Now, we want to take our equation, b squared minus 4ac, and we want to substitute 6 for b. We're going to copy the minus 4, then we're going to do parenthesis, substitute negative 1 for a, close the parenthesis, another parenthesis, then we're going to put a 6 for C. So this is what it's going to look like, parenthesis. I'm going to throw out that B, and in its place I'm going to put a 6. I'm going to use a different color to kind of show you. And then parenthesis, do not forget that squared, very important. Copy the subtraction, copy the 4, start your next parenthesis. We're going to put our A in there. Our A is negative 1. Close the parenthesis. Next parenthesis, we're going to put our C in there, and our C is 3. Okay, now if you did this just like that and you have all those parentheses, you can type that whole line in your calculator. So we're going to do parenthesis, 6 parenthesis squared, don't forget the parenthesis, minus 4, parenthesis, negative 1, parenthesis, parenthesis, 3 parentheses. So if you type it in exactly like you wrote it here with all the parentheses, you will get the correct answer. And when I hit enter, I get 48. So my discriminant equals, I'm going to squeeze it right under here, 48. Oh, here, 48. The answer goes right there. Discriminant is 48. If you forget any of these parentheses, you're going to get the wrong answer. So be very careful. Write the step very neatly. Okay, so my discriminant is positive. If you look at your little graph up here, it says if your discriminant is positive, you're going to have how many solutions? 2. Okay, let's try the next one. A equals 1, that invisible 1. B equals 6. Coefficient in front of the x, and C equals 9. Now copy your formula again. Copying it will help you memorize it. This time I want you to wrap it up in parentheses from the very beginning. So notice I wrapped up my b squared in parentheses, minus 4, parenthesis a, parenthesis c. Now I'm going to fill in the values. I'm going to put my power of 2 before I even put my b in there. So my b is 6 again. I'm going to put a 6 in there. And then copy minus 4, parenthesis, a is 1. Okay, and c is 9. Wrap everything up in those parentheses. punch. This looks like a B. That's a 6, people. Let me rewrite that better so it doesn't look like a B. That's a 6. There we go. Okay, let's put that whole thing in our calculator again. Parenthesis 6 squared minus 4 parenthesis 1 parenthesis 9. And you should get a 0. If you got a 0, that's the right answer. So this equals 0. So my discriminant is 0. Now be careful. Your brain's going to want to think 0. Oh, I must have 0 solutions. 0 is this bounce. You have 1 solution there. I feel like I should be writing those with words. 1 and 2. Because the solution isn't 1, it's 1 solution. So I'm going to have you go back and write the words 1 and 2 there. I like that better. All right, let's try the last one. A equals 1, B equals 3, C equals 8. And what am I doing? B squared minus 4AC. You probably are realizing if you write this formula 3 times like I just did, you're going to have it memorized. Okay, B is 3, so I have 3 squared. Copy the minus, copy the 4. A is 1, C is 8. I didn't change colors this time because I feel like you're probably getting better at this. And remember, in videos, if it's going too fast, just hit pause and catch up or rewind. I'm typing everything in here. Hopefully you are also. And I got a negative 23. So negative 23. All right, I'm in this situation right here. My discriminant is negative, so I have how many solutions? None. No solutions. Okay, that is kind of the first part of lesson 9.5, day 1. So I'm going to end this video here. Again, remember, if you missed anything, pause the video, rewind, go back, make sure your notes look beautiful. Thank you.